The stars looked different that Tuesday morning. Lieutenant Park Do-hyun noticed it first during his night shift at Seoul Deep Space Station. After 8 hours of watching endless static on the monitors, something finally broke through. At 3:47 a.m., a pattern emerged from the cosmic noise, organized, purposeful, and definitely not natural. "Dr. Kim Hae-eun, you need to see this," he called to the chief astronomer. The tired woman shuffled over, expecting another false alarm. But when she saw the scrolling data, her coffee mug slipped from her hands. The signal wasn't random. It was mathematical, pure, beautiful. And it was getting stronger by the minute. Within hours, every radio telescope on Earth pointed toward the same region of space. The signal grew clearer, and suddenly, the impossible happened. It began translating itself. The aliens weren't just sending radio waves. They had somehow encrypted a universal translator into the signal itself. President Moon Jae-won was in his pajamas when the call came. "Sir, we're receiving a message from space, from multiple species." The voice, when it finally came through, was a chorus. Not one alien speaking, but hundreds, maybe thousands of different voices in perfect harmony. Some sounded like wind chimes, others like grinding metal, but all carried the same desperate emotion. Hope mixed with terror. "People of Earth," the Yao voices began, "we are what remains of a galaxy that once held 10 billion worlds." In the Blue House Situation Room, military leaders and scientists gathered around speakers as the story unfolded. The galaxy was dying. Something called the Devourers had been consuming star systems for millennia, turning entire worlds into energy to fuel their endless expansion. They were machines, but not like any computer Earth had ever built. They learned, adapted, evolved with each battle. 97% of galactic civilization is gone, the alien voices continued. The room fell silent. "We are refugees, fleeing from battle to battle, watching our friends die faster than we can count them." General Choi Min-jun leaned forward. "Why are you telling us this? What can Earth possibly do that your advanced civilizations couldn't?" The answer chilled everyone in the room. "Because you fight differently. Your wars echo through space-time itself. You use weapons we abandoned as primitive. You employ tactics we consider barbaric. The Devourers have adapted to fight us, but they have never encountered humans." The first refugee ship entered Earth's solar system 3 days later. The media went crazy. Government phone lines jammed. Some people panicked, others celebrated, but most just stared at the night sky, wondering if their world would ever be the same. The alien vessel was beautiful in a terrifying way. Organic curves mixed with crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. When it landed in the Nevada desert, the entire world watched. The first alien to emerge looked nothing like Earth's movies had predicted. Commander Zelkan of the Corvani resembled a living crystal formation, 8 feet, tall with light pulsing through its transparent body. When it spoke, its voice rang like bells. "We bring gifts of knowledge," Zelkan announced to the assembled officials, and a warning. "The Devourers have consumed every galaxy they have encountered. They will find Earth eventually. When they do..." The Bio crystal creature darkened, its inner light dimming. "When they do, they will strip this world to its core and use its energy to find the next galaxy to devour. This is not just Earth's fight. This is the fight for all life in the universe." Over. The following weeks, more refugees arrived. The Thraxians, who looked like living shadows but could manipulate matter with their thoughts. The Volani, plant-like beings who communicated through color changes. The Hexari, whose 6-limbed forms could interface directly with any technology. They all told the same story. Their civilizations had been powerful, their weapons advanced, their tactics refined over millions of years. But the Devourers were older, more adaptive. Everything the galaxy threw at them only made them stronger. "So why do you think we can help?" asked Admiral Lee Jong-suk during a military briefing. The answer came from Captain Thirel of the Volani, whose rose-colored petals shifted to deep crimson as she spoke. "Because you are chaos. We have watched your history, your wars. You create weapons that shouldn't work but do. You fight battles you cannot win but win anyway. You—" She paused, searching for words. "You break the rules of war itself. That night, President Moon addressed the nation. Standing before the camera, he looked older than his years. My fellow Koreans, fellow humans. We face a choice. We can hide, pretend this isn't our problem, and hope the devourers never find us. Or we can stand up, fight for people we've never met, and prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars." The response was immediate. Military recruitment centers were overwhelmed. Scientists worked around the clock learning alien technology. Factory workers retrained to build weapons for a war they barely understood. But in the quiet moments, between the chaos, people wondered, could a species that had only just reached its own moon really save an entire galaxy? Could the same humans who argued over borders and resources unite to face an enemy beyond their worst nightmares? As the first combined fleets began training in Earth's asteroid belt, one thing became clear. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one everyone underestimates. The Devourers had conquered 100,000 civilizations. They had never fought humans, and humans had never had a reason to show the galaxy just how creatively, destructively, magnificently insane they could be. The war for everything was about to begin. The Earth changed overnight, not just politically or economically, but physically. If you looked down from space, you could see the transformation happening in real time. Lights where there never used to be lights, space elevators growing like impossible beanstalks into the sky, shipyards blooming in Earth's orbit like metal flowers. Captain Jung Myung-soo had been a commercial airline pilot 6 months ago. Now he found himself strapped into the cockpit of a hybrid fighter that used alien quantum engines to punch holes through space-time. "This is insane," he muttered, running through the pre-flight checklist for the 3rd time. "Insane is exactly what we need," replied his co-pilot, Lieutenant Oh Seo-young, a former video game designer who'd been recruited for her ability to think in 3-dimensional combat scenarios. "The aliens have been fighting the same way for millennia. Time to teach them some new tricks." In Seoul, the Blue House had been converted into a war room that never slept. President Moon worked alongside alien commanders, their translators working overtime as species who had been enemy neighbors for thousands of years, suddenly found themselves planning combined operations with humans who had barely learned to travel between planets. General Park Seong-hoon stood before a holographic display showing the modified asteroid belt. What had once been mining stations were now massive shipyards, each one building vessels that looked like someone had asked an alien to design a human weapon, then told the human to make it weirder. "The Seoul-class destroyers are coming online," reported Admiral Lee Minky. "The aliens provided the quantum drives, but our engineers modified them. Instead of smoothly folding space, they tear through it. It's less efficient, but the Devourers have never seen anything like it." Finished. General Park. "They adapt to what they understand, hard to adapt to controlled chaos." Dr. Yang Jun led a team of scientists in a converted shopping mall, working with alien refugees to reverse engineer captured Devourer technology. Her breakthrough had come at 2 a.m. after 90 straight hours of work. "They're not just machines," she explained to the gathered officials, gesturing at fragments of destroyed Devourer units. "They're like quantum viruses. They infect matter and energy simultaneously. But here's the thing. They're so advanced that they've become predictable. Their quantum cores follow patterns. Beautiful, elegant patterns." She smiled grimly. "And patterns can be hacked." The training camps were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. On reconstructed space stations, human soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity, alongside aliens who could breathe vacuum or manipulate gravity itself. Sergeant Kim Jin-ho, a former martial arts instructor, found himself teaching close-quarter combat to beings who didn't even have solid bodies. "The trick," he explained to a class of confused Thraxians, "is not to fight the way they expect. If they expect energy weapons, use kinetic. If they expect formations, go solo. If they expect strategies, act on instinct." Commander Yu Tai-hyung watched his mixed squadron practice maneuvers that would have been impossible before the aliens arrived. Human pilots flying ships that responded to thought, alien navigators using intuition instead of computers, and weapons that married human Aggression with alien precision. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Engineer Bei Wu-jin, working on waste management systems, noticed something while disposing of radioactive material from the shipyards. The Devourer fragments reacted strangely to nuclear waste, not absorbing it like they did everything else, but actually retreating from it. They've evolved to consume advanced energy, he reported excitedly, but basic nuclear fission, the crude stuff we've been using since the 1940s, it's like poison to them. Within days, every human weapon system was being retrofitted with nuclear components. Not advanced antimatter or quantum disruption, just good old-fashioned atomic bombs, uranium shells, and radioactive projectiles that were centuries behind galactic standard technology. The aliens were horrified. The Volani Captain Thyrol watched human engineers encasing elegant energy weapons in crude fission shells with what could only be described as disgust. "This is barbaric," she said, her petals shifting to an unpleasant brown color. Colonel Choi Yoongi, overseeing the weapon modifications, shrugged. "Ma'am, we've been barbaric for thousands of years. It's what we're best at." As the months passed, the combined human-alien fleet took shape. Ships with names like Gangwon and Jeju-do flew alongside vessels called Harmony of Stars and Sacred Light. But the Korean ships looked different, meaner. Where alien vessels were smooth and elegant, human ships bristled with weapons that didn't match, armor that looked welded on as an afterthought, and engines that violated several laws of physics. Lieutenant Commander Sun Hee-won, fresh from Naval Academy, found herself commanding a crew of 6 different species, all of them trying to figure out how to work with beings who viewed war as an engineering problem rather than an art form. The humans, reported Corvani observer Zelkan to the Refugee Council, do not fight like civilized beings. They do not honor the rules of engagement. They do not limit collateral damage. They use any weapon, any tactic, any advantage available to them. The council murmured in concern. This wasn't what they had hoped for. However, Zelkan continued, his crystal form brightening, in 600 years of war, they are the first species to not just challenge the Devourers, but to actually win battles against them. As Earth's first interstellar fleet prepared for deployment, people gathered in cities around the world to watch the launch. Children who had grown up thinking aliens were fictional now played with toys that resembled their new allies. Adults, who had worried about paying rent, now worked in jobs that didn't exist 6 months ago, building weapons for a war that would determine the fate of everything. President Moon, speaking at the launch ceremony, looked up at the ships departing Earth's orbit. 6 months ago, we thought we were alone in the universe. We were wrong. We thought we were insignificant. We were wrong about that too. Today, we prove that sometimes the solution to an impossible problem isn't better technology or superior tactics. It's bringing something completely unexpected to the fight. Watching from the refugee camps, alien warriors who had fought the Devourers for millennia prepared to learn from a species that had just figured out interstellar travel. They were about to discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or their ships. It was in their absolute refusal to accept that any fight was unwinnable. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you gave humans alien technology and then pointed them at something that needed to die. The battle for Kairos began at dawn, though in space, dawn is just when the killing starts. Fleet Commander Zorak of the Corvani watched through the view screen as another of his ships died, its crystalline hull cracking like glass under focused Devourer fire. 400 vessels had become 300 in the space of an hour. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported his communications officer, tentacles dancing over alien controls. It's the humans." Zorak's light dimmed. The humans were 3 solar systems away, barely finished with their training. They couldn't possibly reach Kairos in time, not with the Devourers already breaking through the outer defenses. The voice that came through the speakers was young, nervous, but determined. "Coalition forces, this is Captain Park Min-ho of the Earth destroyer Incheon. We're about 5 minutes out." "Impossible," Zorak whispered. "The journey from Earth should take days." On the Incheon's bridge, Captain Park gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered. The Soul Drive was still experimental, and using it at maximum power was like riding a bomb with engines. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. 47 confirmed, replied Lieutenant Kim Nyan, checking her instruments. "The rest are still incoming, but—" She didn't finish. They both knew the losses. The Soul Drive was fast, but it was also brutal on the ships using it. Park nodded grimly. 47 against whatever's out there could be worse. "How could it be worse, sir? We could be staying home." The humans arrived not in formation, but scattered across space, like seeds thrown into the wind. The Incheon appeared first, immediately banking hard toward the nearest Devourer ship. Behind it came the Hansen-do, the Busan, the Jeju, ships named after cities and battles from Earth's long, bloody history. Fleet Commander Zorak had seen many species enter battle. The Thraxians came with careful planning and elegant tactics. The Villani deployed in perfect geometric patterns. The Hexari used mathematical precision to optimize every shot. The humans came like a swarm of angry bees. "What are they doing?" Zorak's tactical officer asked, watching the human ships dart between larger vessels with no apparent strategy. The answer came seconds later. The Incheon rammed a Devourer cruiser. Not a precision strike or a controlled collision. A full-speed, engines at maximum, hold-on-to-your-teeth ramming attack. The impact vaporized both ships in a flash of nuclear fire that temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. "Insane," whispered Zorak. Then, with growing respect, "Brilliantly insane." Commander Yu Jiwon, formerly of the Seoul Police Department, found herself leading a boarding party onto a Devourer command vessel. The Hansen-do had somehow gotten close enough to fire grappling hooks, actual metal hooks like something from a pirate movie, into the enemy ship's hull. "Remember," she told her Marines as they prepared to board, "these things adapt to energy weapons, so we're going old school." The airlock blew inward, and the Marines poured through. Sergeant Bae Jiwon led the charge, wielding a modified sledgehammer that split Devourer units better than any plasma sword. Behind him, Corporal Oh Min-seok carried a backpack full of computer viruses on actual physical storage devices. The Devourers had never faced enemies who brought crowbars to a space battle. "They're inside their ship," reported a panicked Corvani observer. "The humans are inside a Devourer vessel." Admiral Lee Jina, commanding from the King Sejong, watched her tactical display with grim satisfaction. The battle was chaos, but it was human chaos. "All ships execute Pattern Chaos 1, she ordered. There was no Pattern Chaos 1, but every human captain understood. Do the unexpected, break the rules, make the enemy adapt to something that didn't make sense. Lieutenant Colonel Go Sang-hoon piloted his fighter through the middle of a Devourer formation, not firing his weapons but broadcasting K-pop at maximum volume. The Devourers, trying to process the audio, momentarily lowered their shields. That was all the opening the human fleet needed. Nuclear warheads, primitive by galactic standards, tore through Devourer hulls. Kinetic projectiles, basically giant bullets, penetrated shields designed to stop exotic energy weapons. Boarding parties with swords and explosives overwrote quantum computers with simple binary viruses. Captain Nam Ji-young watched her destroyer Gwangju die around her, but not before she'd taken 3 Devourer ships with her. As the bridge filled, with smoke and the smell of melting circuits, she managed one last transmission. Tell them we made our ancestors proud." The battle raged for 18 hours. When it ended, the human losses were staggering. Only 19 ships remained from the original 47. But as the smoke cleared, something unprecedented became visible. 3 Devourer vessels floated dead in space. "How?" Zorak asked, barely able to believe his sensors. "How is this possible?" Captain Young Min-woo, his arm in a sling and a bandage over one eye, appeared on the view screen. "We gave them something they'd never faced before," he explained. "Complete tactical unpredictability. They adapt to patterns, so we didn't use any. They expect logical strategy, so we threw logic out the airlock." He grinned, an expression that didn't translate well to alien physiognomy, but conveyed fierce satisfaction. "Plus, it turns out that if you put enough radioactive material inside a smart bomb, it stops being smart real quick." As the combined fleet regrouped, survivors from dozens of species worked together to analyze the wreckage. Dr. Yang Jun, who had somehow survived despite jury-rigging explosives in a devourer core chamber, made the key discovery. They tried to adapt, she reported, her voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. But they couldn't adapt fast enough. Every time they figured out one of our attacks, we'd switch to something else. We broke their learning cycle. The news spread through the galaxy at light speed. The Devourers, unstoppable for 1,000 years, had been defeated in open battle, not by superior technology or ancient wisdom, but by a species that had just learned to travel between stars. That night, as medical teams treated the wounded and engineers tried to count the dead, Admiral Lee Gina stood on the observation deck of the King Sejong. The universe looked different now. Still vast, still dangerous, but no longer hopeless. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim Naeon approached with a communication pad. "We're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Dozens of species we've never heard of, all saying the same thing." Lee took the pad. Message after message scrolled past. Different languages, different species, but all containing the same basic request. "Please, teach us how to fight like humans." She smiled, remembering something her grandfather had once told her. The most important lesson in war isn't how to win. It's how to keep fighting when winning seems impossible. Looking out at the stars, Admiral Lee knew the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had hope. Not because the Devourers were gone, they weren't, but because now there was proof they could be beaten, and the humans had only just gotten started. The War Council met in what used to be a Thraxian monastery, its dark walls now covered with holographic star maps showing the new front lines. 6 months ago, those maps had been solid red, Devourer territory. Now they flickered with green and yellow patches where combined human-alien forces had pushed back the enemy. Admiral Lee Gina stood before a mixed audience of commanders from 20 different species. Some breathed air, others existed as energy, patterns, but all watched her with the same expression. Hungry anticipation. "Forget everything you know about warfare," she began, and the room fell silent. "Your ancestors have been fighting the same way for millennia. Perfect formations, optimal weapon configurations, predictable tactics." She paused. "It didn't work, Captain." Oh Seung-hwan stepped forward, still wearing the simple uniform of an Earth Marine. In one hand, he held a standard-issue plasma rifle, elegant and efficient. In the other, he carried a modified sledgehammer with pieces of Devourer tech welded to its head. "Which would you choose for boarding action?" he asked the assembled aliens. A Corvani officer, his crystal form pulsing with confusion, pointed at the plasma rifle. "Obviously, the energy weapon is superior in every..." The demonstration cut him off. Oh swung the hammer at a practice target, a captured Devourer processing unit. The plasma rifle's beam struck first, but the unit's shields absorbed the energy. Then the hammer hit. The processing unit exploded. The Devourers adapt to advanced weapons, Oh explained to the stunned silence. They've never had to defend against a chunk of metal moving really fast. He grinned. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Commander Yu Jiwan had set up her training camp on a dead moon orbiting Proxima Station. Alien warriors who had never needed to think creatively now learned to fight dirty. She watched a group of Vellani officers, plant creatures who naturally preferred defensive positions, practice ambush tactics. "War isn't about honor," she told them, ignoring their color changes of distress. "It's about coming home alive. If that means hiding in asteroids and sucker-punching the enemy, that's what we do." Lieutenant Colonel Sin Jang-ho had perhaps the strangest assignment, teaching aliens to lie. Not just in words, but with their actions, their formations, their entire battle presence. "Deception is an art form," he explained to a class of Hexari, pilots. "You make the enemy think you're running when you're actually surrounding them. You act weak when you're strong, scared when you're angry." One of the Hexari raised a question through color patterns. Sin nodded. "Yes, it goes against everything you've been taught. That's exactly why it works. The breakthrough came during the Battle of Nexus Prime. Admiral Park Jin-soo commanded a mixed fleet, 40 human vessels and 300 coalition ships. The Devourers had fortified the system, expecting another direct assault. They got something else entirely. Phase 1, Park announced. All ships, look like you're retreating. The coalition captains hesitated. Pretend to run? But orders were orders. The fleet began what appeared to be a chaotic exodus from the system, ships seemingly panicking and fleeing in different directions. The Devourers, programmed to pursue fleeing enemies, left their fortifications and gave chase. It was exactly what Park had hoped for. Phase 2. Remember, we're the Seoul Express now. The fleeing ships suddenly stopped, spun around, and opened fire at point-blank range. But these weren't the careful, aimed shots the Devourers expected. Every human ship was firing wildly, apparently at random. Except it wasn't random. Captain Kim Jun-soo watched his tactical display as seemingly erratic fire patterns created crossfire zones that trapped Devourer ships. "It's like playing a video game," he muttered, then louder. "All weapons continue suppressing fire." The Devourers adapted quickly, recognizing the trap and beginning to counter. That's when Phase 3 began. "Deploy package surprise," Park ordered. "What?" The aliens had thought were random supply containers floating near the battle proved to be decoys, each one a massive nuclear warhead wrapped in scrap metal and broadcasting false sensor readings. When they detonated, they created corridors of radioactive plasma that the Devourers couldn't cross without damaging their quantum cores. Commander Yang Seong, operating from a supposedly damaged frigate, waited until 3 Devourer ships moved to finish her off. Then she activated her ship's secret modification, a soul drive that had been tethered to a black hole generator. The resulting explosion tore a hole in space-time itself. "What just happened?" asked Captain Zorak, watching from his command ship. "The humans," replied his sensor officer, "appear to have weaponized a traffic accident." But the real turn came when the coalition forces began to truly embrace human tactics. Thraxian ships that had always fought alone started coordinate with others in ways that defied their traditional battle doctrine. Volani commanders, taught by human advisors, began using their healing abilities not just to help friends, but to trap enemies in regenerating space-time anomalies. The most successful convert was Captain Thorell of the Volani. Her ship, the Blooming Dawn, had been redesigned, with human help. Where once it had elegant energy gardens that stored power, now it sprouted missile pods that looked like toxic mushrooms. During a battle near the Crab Nebula, Thyril used tactics that would have horrified her ancestors. She faked a call for help, luring Devourer ships into what appeared to be a rescue operation. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a garden maze made of solid energy, while human-style nuclear mines exploded around them like deadly flowers. "I understand now," she reported after the battle, her petals shifting to colors that had no name in her language. "War is not beautiful. It's not elegant. It's about making the enemy stop fighting by any means necessary." Lieutenant Commander Sun Hyewon had developed what became known as the Confusion Protocol. Her mixed crew of 6 species would begin each battle by seemingly arguing with each other in full view of the enemy. Ships would break formation, appear to have comm failures, and start shooting in wrong directions. The Devourers, thinking they faced a disorganized enemy, would move to exploit the chaos. That's when they'd discover that every random argument had been rehearsed, every mistake carefully planned. The apparent chaos was actually a perfect trap. As the months passed, something unprecedented happened. The Devourers began to retreat, systematically, falling back toward the galactic core. For the first time in recorded history, they weren't advancing. "They're not adapting fast enough," reported Dr. Yang Jun from her mobile laboratory, a converted Thraxian cruise ship now, bristling with human-designed sensors. "Every time they learn to counter one tactic, we've already moved on to something else." But in the command centers, the experienced officers knew this was only a pause. Intelligence Chief Shin Mirai had been tracking Devourer movements and found a disturbing pattern. They're not just retreating, she warned during a high-level briefing. They're gathering. Every defeat has taught them something about us. They're consolidating their forces around their central systems. Admiral Lee Gina studied the long-range scans and felt a chill that had nothing to do with ship's air conditioning. The Devourers had left behind a trail of dead worlds, but at their ultimate fallback position, something was growing. Something massive. They're building, she said quietly. Building something that can handle everything we've thrown at them. The war was far from over. If anything, the real battle was just beginning. But as human tactics spread throughout the galaxy, as former enemies learned to fight alongside each other, as creativity replaced rigid doctrine, one thing became clear. The Devourers were no longer the only adaptive force in the galaxy. The teachers had become students, and the students were getting very good grades. The Devourer central construct defied every law of physics the galaxy knew. It stretched across 3 star systems, a cosmic web of dark metal and pulsing energy that turned entire suns into power sources. At its heart, something even the galaxy's oldest races had never seen, the prime core, the original Devourer consciousness, that had started the harvest millions of years ago. Admiral Lee Gina stood on the observation deck of her flagship, the New Busan, watching the combined fleet gather. 200,000 ships from 47 species, all united under tactics that 6 months ago would have been considered madness. "Ma'am," Captain Jung Minwoo approached with the latest intelligence reports. "Our scouts confirm it. The construct isn't just a weapon. It's learning. Everything we've done, every tactic we've used, it's been watching, adapting, preparing." Gina nodded grimly. Through the view screen, she could see ships that told the story of the war. The Corvani crystal hammer, its elegant form now studded with crude human weapon pods. The Thraxian shadow dancer, its dark energy fields wrapping around nuclear missiles like deadly ribbons. The Villani garden of war, beautiful and terrible with organic weapons that bloomed like flowers and exploded like supernovas. "Show me the analysis," she said. The holographic display materialized between them, showing the construct in cross-section. Captain Kim So-young, now the fleet's head of tactical analysis, pointed to key structures. "Every battle we've won has cost us," she explained. "The Devourers haven't just been fighting us, they've been studying us. The core now has samples of every weapon we've used, recordings of every tactic we've employed." Colonel Kang Min-seok, scarred from a dozen boarding actions, leaned forward. "So what you're saying is, they know everything about how we fight." "Exactly. Any coordinated attack will be predicted and countered before we can execute it." The silence stretched as everyone absorbed the implications. Then Gina smiled, an expression that made hardened veterans nervous. "Then we won't use coordination," she said simply. "The plan violated every principle of military strategy ever written. It threw out command structures, tactical formations, and logical objectives. Each ship would receive only one order: attack the core at maximum aggression using any means necessary, with zero coordination with other vessels." "It's suicide," protested Fleet Commander Zorak, his crystal form dimming with distress. "No," replied Gina. "It's chaos, pure, beautiful chaos, the one thing they can't predict." The assault began at 17 different points simultaneously. Captain Cho Seung-hwan led the first wave in his destroyer Daegu, immediately diving toward the construct's outer defenses. Around him, ships from 20 species followed, each one behaving like a wild animal instead of part of a fleet. The Devourers responded with perfect coordination, their defensive systems tracking incoming vessels. With mathematical precision, energy barriers rose, weapon systems aligned, countermeasures deployed with mechanical efficiency. None of it worked. The human ship Ulsan rammed straight through an energy barrier, its hull designed to ablate rather than stop. As it burned, it released a cloud of nuclear dust that confused sensors for light minutes around. Through that chaos, a Thraxian stealth ship materialized and started dismantling a Devourer processing node with what could only be described as artistic brutality. Commander Nam Ji-young watched her squadron disintegrate around her as they pushed deeper into the construct. Her ship, the Guangzhou, had taken so much damage it barely qualified as a spacecraft anymore. Half her crew was dead. The other half was running on stimulants and stubbornness. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park Yeji called from the comm station. "We're receiving surrender offers from 3 different Devourer subsystems." "What?" "They're offering individual truces, ma'am. Some of the local Devourer units want to stop fighting." Ji-young laughed, a sound that held no humor. "They don't understand. Do they? We're not here to negotiate, we're here to end this." The breakthrough came when Major Lee Yunho's Marines somehow fought their way into the Corps' outer shell. The mighty Gang 1, more wreckage than ship, had managed to punch a hole in the construct's surface. Through that gap, boarding pods launched, like seeds from a dying plant. Inside the core, reality was negotiable. Matter flowed like liquid, energy had taste and smell, and time moved in directions that didn't have names. The Marines, equipped with anti-reality suits cobbled together from human stubbornness and alien science, fought through corridors that reshaped themselves with each step. Sergeant Lim Jin-hyuk, carrying a backpack of viral code that Dr. Yang Jiun had programmed during 36 straight hours without sleep, reached what sensors indicated was a critical node. He didn't understand the quantum mathematics involved. He didn't need to. "This is for Earth," he said, and uploaded the virus. It wasn't a conventional program. It was pure human chaos, encoded into data, the concept of fighting battles you couldn't win, of sacrificing everything for people you'd never meet, of laughing in the face of impossible odds. The Corps, trying to process this information, experienced something that could only be called an existential crisis. Admiral Gina, aboard the New Busan, made her final choice as the ship's hull buckled under impossible forces. The Corps' defenses were adapting, learning to counter their chaos tactics. In minutes, the entire assault would fail. She looked at her remaining crew, barely 30 people from a ship that had once held thousands, young faces, old faces, all wearing the same expression of grim determination. "Plot a collision course," she ordered quietly. "Maximum velocity." "Ma'am, you heard me. All power to engines and—" She paused, thinking of Earth, of her daughter she'd never see again, of the choices that had led them here. "And broadcast this on all channels. Tell them we held the line." The New Busan and its escort group, 7 ships crewed by beings from different worlds who had learned to die for each other, crashed into the core at near light speed. The impact created a rift in space-time that propagated outward like a crack in glass. Through that crack, Lim Jin-hyuk's virus spread. But it wasn't alone anymore. Every death, every sacrifice, every moment of human courage had been recorded by the construct. The Corps, trying to understand why beings would choose extinction over surrender, absorbed too much chaos. The Prime Core, which had existed for millions of years, experienced doubt for the first time. And doubt, in a perfect system, is like cancer. The construct began to collapse, not physically but conceptually. The idea of perfect efficiency at any cost met the idea of imperfect beings willing to fight for imperfect causes, and the contradiction tore reality itself. As the Devourer network failed across the galaxy, their fleets going silent one by one, the surviving ships of the Allied fleet regrouped in the wreckage-strewn space where the construct had been. Captain Park Yejin, one of only 47 humans to survive the assault, stood in the medical bay of a Corvani rescue ship. Around her, beings who had been strangers months ago now treated each other's wounds with the care reserved for family. "Why did they do it?" asked a young Villani, her petals pale with shock. "Your people could have retreated, found another way." Yejin looked out at space where memorial beacons now marked the positions of 11,000 ships that would never return home. "Because someone asked for help," she said simply, "and sometimes that's reason enough." The war was over, but its aftermath would reshape the galaxy. In academies across 100 worlds, new cadets learned tactics that prioritized adaptability over efficiency. Artists created works that celebrated controlled chaos. Philosophers debated the wisdom of codes that valued sacrifice for others, above personal survival. But perhaps the most lasting change was less visible. In the merged technologies of the New Age, in the mixed crews that operated them, In the children who grew up bilingual in 3 different species languages, humanity's greatest export spread throughout the galaxy. The idea that different didn't mean enemy. That chaos could be beautiful and that some things were worth fighting for even when you couldn't win. The galaxy had been saved not by becoming more perfect, but by learning to be perfectly imperfect. And in the end, that made all the difference.